There's a Zen parable about a man riding a horse, and the horse is running wildly out of control, and the man is holding on for dear life. He's grabbing the neck, he's got his legs bound around, and the horse is just taken off. And on this journey around town, the man actually passes a friend of his, and the friend calls out to him, "Hey, slow down, where are you going?" And the man says, "I don't know, ask the horse." I love this little story on several levels. First, as a child, I grew up in a family that had horses, and we always rode bareback. So I know that feeling of really hanging on for dear life. But also, I think it's a great metaphor for life. How many times are we moving so quickly and realizing in a panic that we're not sure where we're headed? But I also love this metaphor for today's world of marketing. Um, you know, the last 5 years, there have been so many evolutions in how we build brands and how we market companies and how we influence decisions that, I think there's been more change over the last 5 years than the whole first 20 years of my career. And so sometimes I do feel like that. I feel like I'm hanging on for dear life and I'm taking a ride and I'm not sure exactly where we're headed. That evolution in marketing, we know, is fueled by things like needing to be more personal, be more human, be more relevant, for small business owners to have the ability to market in a do-it-yourself way. So they're all good changes, but they're hard to keep track of and hard to keep up with. It's actually one of the reasons that Allegory, my agency, really loves HubSpot. HubSpot has introduced us, of course, to the inbound methodology and to a whole system of tools and thinking and education and support that, I feel like it helps us take the reins back a little bit and really establish direction and strategy and measure our progress against a set of goals, in ways that are helping us really move our clients and our own business forward. So thank you, HubSpot. When we first started with HubSpot, it was a little bit of a struggle for us. We had a hard time while we really liked the inbound methodology. We had a hard time working that message into our own brand and positioning. As a matter of fact, I got involved in a couple of online debates in LinkedIn with other HubSpot agencies about kind of how to address putting together a brand and an inbound marketing program. I voted then, and I still believe today, that starting with a story and starting with a really clear understanding of your brand is the best way to get to a effective, impactful inbound marketing program. Or we always, look at it in terms of really understanding the why and the what and the how and how we talk about those things as fueling the content that we will develop for a client. It doesn't always work that way in the real world, but certainly we feel it's ideal. Because just, think about that man on a horse again. I think there are equally a number of businesses that don't understand their brand, that don't understand their culture, that don't understand how to position themselves and where they're going and how they're talking about themselves and presenting themselves is all connected to their marketing program. But at Allegory, we feel like there's a real intersection between the world of culture and communications. And so that's where we try to get clients going. It reminds me of 15 years ago, I was a consultant. I was an independent marketing consultant. I was working for a telecommunications firm in the Washington, D.C. area. And I had been on an engagement with them for a couple of months for a product launch. And my husband kept asking me, he's like, well, what is this company? What do they do? And I struggled to answer the question, which, seems crazy not to know what a company's doing. And a couple months later, the holidays roll around. My husband and I get invited to a cocktail party for the company. My husband is Kurt. He's pretty easy to take to a party like this because he's comfortable in his skin. He likes to dance. He likes to talk. He likes to meet people. And so we get to the party, and pretty much we don't see each other for the rest of the night. He goes off and has conversations, and we get back together, later when we're leaving, and we get in the car. And my husband says to me, "You know what? Nobody at that company knows what you do. Nobody." And I realized that while I've been having cocktail conversations, he's been conducting this sort of social experiment, if you will. Trying to figure out who is this, what is this brand all about? Compare that example to a story about John F. Kennedy. When President Kennedy first visited the NASA space headquarters in Washington, D.C., they were giving him a tour of the facility. And he ends up down in the basement talking to one of the janitors. And he says to the janitor, "Well, what do you do for NASA?" And the janitor pauses on his broom and he says, "Sir, I'm putting a man on the moon." We probably can all find examples of those two very extremely different companies and cultures. I think as marketing agencies, we have kind of a frontline view into company culture. We work with business leaders on helping them with those kinds of issues, and I think they really rely on us that way. Here in this room could come up with a similar set of examples. A company on one hand that lacked direction, that lacked a common language and understanding, versus an organization where even the person in the basement really understands the vision and where they fit in. I think there's a kind of an invisible line that separates the boys from the men and those two organizations from each other. On one side of the line, you have a company that might be really competent at their business and at doing what they do. But on the other side of the line is a company that's really compelling and is compelling in a way that gets people excited and on board. Back on the other side of the line, maybe there's a company whose communication programs are informative, whose inbound marketing programs, drive leads from an informational standpoint. But if we cross over to the other side of the line, you meet a company that is not just giving information, but is really inspiring people to be or do or create or engage at a new level. So I feel like our job as a marketing agency is really about helping our clients cross that line, helping them build the kind of company, the kind of culture, the kind of brand, the kind of marketing strategies that really help them stand out and engage and inspire people. Culture is a really hot word today. In fact, last year, 2014, Merriam-Webster named culture the word of the year. And we know even HubSpot has a culture code. I think what's happening is that as people and businesses and companies become more connected online, as communications become very instantaneous, and companies and brands find themselves sort of under the spotlight of public opinion, they are more concerned about their culture. They're more concerned about their ability to kind of walk their talk and be authentic in the world and through their communication programs. But culture can seem elusive. When we go in and we have a conversation with a company about culture, it's hard to name, it's hard to identify, and it's because culture really is kind of like that underlying current. It's the things people say when you walk out of the room. It is, unlike our mission, vision, and values that may be very spelled out, culture represents this whole energy that exists that's unwritten. What are those patterns? What are the rights and rituals and reward systems that exist here at our organization? All of those things might be wrapped up in what we call culture. It's a lot about the why, the internal motivation, as opposed to kind of what we do in the world. What I want to introduce you to today is a new methodology for looking at culture and a set of tools and systems that will really help you look at the underlying cultural patterns present in a client organization or even in your own organization. Tools that can help you kind of unlock those patterns and assess kind of what the collective beliefs are, the attitudes, the behaviors, um, and interpret those things through 12 different archetypal patterns. Archetypes, cultural archetypes, is a Jungian psychology. I was a psychology major, so I love doing this work. But they are universal stories that really connect people at a very deep emotional level and really help us create a shared sense of meaning. There's stories like heroes. There's stories about revolutionaries and magicians and innocents and caregivers. And as we begin to understand our own stories in our organization, our own cultural patterns, and as we help clients begin to see and understand those things in their organizations, we have an opportunity to really use culture as a framework for building a brand and for building a really impactful inbound marketing program that captures attention on a much deeper level. So, who's with me? Who's ready to join the culture conversation? This is going to be fun. It's going to be fast-paced. So let's go.